much appreciate that you've gotten up early, except for Paru, who's close to my time zone, and it's the late afternoon for her. Today, we're going to be talking about what it means to have production files as you're making a film, and also have a look at questions you might have for your chase scene. All right, but before we actually get started, please go to these links. I've posted 2 links, and they will help you during the session. One is the YouTube link, which has a playlist. And if you're not able to grab it from here, or you can read it pretty easily, right? Is it easy to find? Okay, good. And then the second link that I'd like you to have open is to this Google Drive folder, where I've provided you with examples and templates for your film production files if you choose to use them as you're making your films in the future. So are you able to get those as well? Said, can you tell me, are you able to view them and also download them? Perfect.
Yeah, I'm able to do so.
Okay, that's great. In that case, I won't worry about that. All right, so the whole point of this lesson is to go through what a film production looks like from very beginning to the very end, and to try and give you some idea of how to set up your film productions. I know that learning film the way that you're learning film is really brave in terms of you're doing so much of your decision making by yourselves, and if you were in a face-to-face class with your teacher, with me, you'd have a lot more access to this kind of information. So I really wanted to take the time today just to talk to you about some good practice and how to use it. Also because your film production skills will be evaluated at the end of the 2 years of studying film at Pamoja, and you will be producing a final film and a commentary that is supporting evidence of decisions that you made during making your final film. So it's actually really, really important that you practice gathering that information now and really understanding what the different roles are within a production. So what you need to know in order to make a good film are what to include in your film production files. That's a first. The format of the different files, because they are formatted in such a way that they have an official standard in the industry that we emulate in this room, and what the different production phases are. Do any of you know what the production phases are? Any guesses? No? Don't be shy. Okay. So let's look at the film production files first. Yes, Saeed. It's the idea of when you do those different things. So if you're doing storyboarding, when does that happen? And if you're script writing, when does that happen? So we have 3 phases in film production, and they are known as pre-production, production, and post-production. So it's exactly what you're asking there. So the film production files that I am sharing with you are not all the film production files that are used in a real feature film, but they're the ones that you are going to need to use as you're creating your student films. So they're a way to organize your filmmaking. They're also a way for you to have a really clear vision before you capture your film on screen. Alfred Hitchcock was notorious for being the kind of director who knew frame for frame what his movie was going to look like, even before he got to the studio. He planned it so carefully, so meticulously, that he had a very clear vision for absolutely every moment in the film. And that's a hard skill to have, but if you put these files together, you will start to get close to that. So it's also really important to have a record of your decision making, because when you're in the moment of making a film, you can sometimes lose track of your aims and goals, but also because as students, you have to talk about this in your final exam piece. You have to be able to express to a total stranger what you did during the film and how you did it and why you did it. And if you have files like this, you won't forget what decisions you made. And you also have really great physical evidence to give them. All right, so the film production files listed here, it looks a bit daunting, but it really, really isn't. We're going to go through each one of them and have a little talk about each one very quickly. The very first thing, oh, that's unfortunate. The highlight has taken away the actual word. That's not what it's supposed to do. Right here, it's supposed to say an ideas page. So the very first thing you need is an actual idea. What is your film about? And you need to establish that for yourself. And if you're working in a group, you need to establish that in a group before you even begin to do anything else. What is the story? And there's a really lovely way to think about this. If you can put this into one sentence, you are doing very, very well. So I always ask my students in class, what's your story? What's your plot? And do you know who E.M. Forster is? E.M. Forster is an author. And he said once, the story is the king died. The plot is the king died and then the queen died from grief. In that moment of stating the plot, first of all, we know the king died. And then we know that the queen died because of grief. Now we have all sorts of possibilities to think about. What caused her grief? Was it that the king died in war and there was a battle? In which case, what was the battle about? Was it that her son killed his father so that he could take the throne? Was it that he died from a hunting accident? You know, there's so many different ways that you can start thinking about how this story is going to unravel. And as you discuss that, either by yourself, with yourself, or in your group, you start to get ideas as to what your story could be about. The second thing is, after you figured out what your story is, your ideas page, you need to write a script. And you need to write it out properly so that you can start to imagine it. And you need to write it out so that you can start thinking about how people speak and what they're doing and what you should be showing instead of them speaking it out. Writing a really good script takes time. Even if there's no dialogue in your film, you should be writing a script. There's a really great piece of software called Celtx, and you can log on online to use Celtx. The beautiful thing about Celtx is it provides you with your formatting and how things work in a script, so you don't have to worry about setting up the format. The third thing is, after you've got your idea in place, you've written your script, you've sorted your script out, you've really worked with it, you need to draw what your film looks like. You need to storyboard it. And then you can see if your script actually works. And you can start thinking about, well, can I actually shoot this scene? And if I can't shoot this scene the way that I imagine it or the way that I really want it to be, what can I do in order to make changes to my script or my story in order to fulfill my vision? After you've done your storyboard, you want to make a plan. You want to start mapping out what your film's geography is. Where are the locations and how do they connect to each other? What does the interior of your house look like? And it's not necessarily your own home. You're going to use your own home for parts of it, but you might go to another home for other parts of your interior of your film house. So how are you going to make those two things blend together? This is called creative geography in filmmaking, and it's the idea that you want to create a space in the filmic world that makes sense. A really great way to do that is for you to map it out. And I don't mean necessarily that you have to draw a geographical map, although for your chase scene, that would be a great idea. But just so that you know how one room connects to another, or where a door leads, or what's outside, or where the streets are supposed to go. Then once you've done that, you should make a set list and a location list. There's a difference between a set and a location. A set is your on-film environment. So let's say I'm going to turn my classroom into a spaceship, just as a quick example. I'm going to call my set Interior Spaceship. The location of my set is going to be room 517 at my school. So I'm going to give the address of my school, and I'm going to give the location as the place where the spaceship exists and lives. Then you want to list out your shots. And you have two types of shot lists. You have a shot list, which is the order of the shots in your script. And you have a shooting list, which is the order that you shoot your script in. It is very rare that you shoot your script in the order that it is written. What you do is you gather together all your locations and you shoot via location and set. And no matter where that event happens in the script, you shoot all those scenes on one day. Does that make sense? Can I just get a little response from you guys to know that you're still there? Because I don't know if you hear me. Oh, thank you, Sebastian. That's great. A little smiley face. Wonderful. Thank you very much. All right. So then you have to make a props list. Oh, Paru, I will repeat the set and locations list. A location is the physical space where your set exists. The example that I used was, my room is called room 517 at my school at the So I'm going to give that as my location, but the room becomes, in my film world, Interior Spaceship. Does that make sense to you, Paru? No problem. I will follow up on that later. Let's talk about a props list. And a props list is not the same as a set list. A props list is anything that an actor touches and moves on set. Anything that they exist with in terms of, if you go to set and there's furniture and they don't actually move the furniture, then that is set dressing. But if they take the chair and they throw it across the room, it becomes a prop. So the reason you have a props list is because you have to reset your props when you do a retake of your scene. And it's very important for continuity that you have the props in the correct space. So a prop is anything that an actor physically picks up and moves around. But set is just what exists as the space that they interact with but don't necessarily move. Any questions about a props list? Good. Okay. After your props list, you want to make a list of your actors. And your actors are two things. They are the actual people who are acting in your film. They're your friends, or they're people that you've asked to be a part of your film. So they have a name that is their own name, but then they're also characters. And the reason you want this list is so that you can keep track of who is playing which role, but also what characteristics does this particular character have? Do they need to have special clothing? Is there a certain type of makeup that you want them to be wearing? Do you need any special effects in terms of effects makeup? You know, this kind of thing. So it's always good to have that. It's always good as well to have, just in case you're on set and your actor is missing, and you can give them a quick call and remind them where they're supposed to be. You also want a crew list. If you're working with other people, you want to know who's in charge of what, who's the director, who is the cinematographer, who's the editor, who's the sound person. Whoever is part of your group should be on that list, listed with their role. You're not all doing all the jobs. You need to choose which job you're doing so that you can focus on that job. So if you're the director, you are directing. You're not also doing camera unless you're working by yourself. And if you have a camera person, they're the camera person and they're in charge of certain things. An equipment list is important so that you know that you have your camera, if you need a tripod, if you're using a slider, know to take something so you can charge your camera if you want. Keep several SD cards with you so that you don't run out of space on your camera and you can just switch out your cards without losing time on set. If you're using lights, etc., etc., you want to make sure that those pieces of equipment are ready for you before you go to set and that you have access to them. And you need a production schedule. This is really, really important because you need to map out when you're going to make your film. It takes time to make a really good film, and it takes great planning and coordination of many people to make a really good film. I always encourage my students to produce their films over several days and weeks. To make a really good film, the planning part can take 3-4 weeks to put together. In your case, you don't have that. You're doing a short little piece for your chase scene, but you should take several days to put together your idea for your chase scene. Then you should plan very carefully when you can go and capture your chase scene, but all your decision making for that has already been put into place. You go to a location, you shoot, you follow your script, your storyboard, and your shoot list, and then you come back and you edit. But mapping it out and actually putting it into an agenda so that you know where it fits into your life of being a very busy student is extremely important. And then permissions. It's very important that you have permission if you are borrowing equipment from anybody else. If you have got the agreement from your actors, actually have them sign a little contract with you to say that they will be there on such and such a day to help you complete your project. If you're using a location that doesn't belong to you, make sure that you have spoken to the person whose location it is, if it's a teacher's classroom, if it's a friend's house, and that you have secured the ability to be in that space and reminded them of that. So in the film production folder that I've shared with you, I have given you examples of these different things. I've also given you an example of a process journal. And that process journal is something that I use with my students when I'm teaching them how to make film. I don't expect you to fill out the whole process journal here on Pamoja, but it's a really great way to look at how to break down a film. I've given you 2 example pieces from my own students who said I had permission to share them with you. And you can go look at those. Yes, we can go to the previous slide. Do you have questions? Sorry about the highlights, Nikos. It didn't look like that when I uploaded it initially. It is permissions to make sure that you have permission to be in a location or permission to have an actor in your film, so on and so forth. In Pamoja, in Canvas, I've uploaded the slides. They're there for you to download, so you have a copy of these as notes. Thank you, Maya. You're welcome. This is just a screenshot of what's inside the film files that I've put together for you on Google Drive. And you can go and grab these at any time. Are there any questions about those film files? Do you want to take a moment right now and have a quick look to see if you can see the files? Please go ahead, have a look, and then ask me any questions that you have about what's there. Can you follow this link that is right here if you type this link in? Otherwise, in Canvas, in the announcement for today's discussion, I've posted the link and you can just click on it. Good. Does anybody have any questions? Today's discussion is just to give you an overview. I'm always available on Canvas for questions about production. Thank you, Said. That's good to know. Good, Nikos? Super. All right, so we'll just move on a little bit. My students always ask me, oh, do I have to do this for every film that I'm making? And I always tell them, no, you don't have to, but you should.